Good evening. Today is August 17, 2020, and this is the 12th episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari, the Republican nominee for U.S. Congress in the 9th Congressional District of Illinois. My guest today is Dr. Barat Barai, MD, who is an oncologist in Medial, Indiana. But more importantly, he is a key leader in promoting India-U.S. relations. Dr. Barai is one of the pioneers who ensured the signing of the Indo-US nuclear deal. He also organized meetings to raise resources for Modi in order to support him in becoming the Prime Minister of India. Dr. Barai is a man with whom Prime Minister Modi has stayed with in the US because of their relationship when he was a party worker with veterans also like BJP Joshi. When Prime Minister Modi was to visit the United States to address a huge public gathering, he was denied a visa by Jan Shkowski, the current Democratic representative of the 9th Congressional District. Dr. Barai worked with the help of Hai Shah of TV Asia and made the agreement for a video address of the Prime Minister to the Indian community in the United States. When everyone was criticizing Modi for running to become the next Prime Minister of India, Dr. Modi, along with NRIs under umbrella of NRI Club, working in support, countered those criticisms, and by using social media, appeared to support the Modi's election. He was key in establishing Modi's ability to be able to be here to address the Indian American community in Madison Square Garden. He is a longtime friend and confidant of Prime Minister Modi and has hosted several prominent other leaders, such as the leadership within the Indian National Assemblies, to be here in support of what the Indian-U.S. relationship has to be. And he has received numerous awards in the last 35 plus years, including the highest civilian awards given to overseas Indians and people of Indian origin, the Pravasi Samman. He also joined the elite group of awardees for the Ellis Island Medal of Honor that also include individuals like Tony Blair and Bill Clinton. The honor counted by the National Ethnic Coalition organizations, which honors those immigrants who distinguish themselves with their own ethnic group while exemplifying the values of American way of life. Dr. Barai, welcome to the show, and thank you very much for being here today with us.
Thank you, Sargis, for that kind introduction.
Dr. Barai, it's good that we've had a chance to cover a little bit about who you are, but if you could tell us a bit more about yourself, Dr. Barai. When did you come to the United States, and how did you get involved with what you do today for the Indian community?
I came to the United States in December of 1974. After that, I did my residency in internal medicine, then followed by fellowship in medical oncology at Northwestern University, Chicago, followed by fellowship in hematology at Rush Medical School. And since then, I have been right next to Chicago in Munster, Indiana, and I've been director of medical oncology and cancer center at Methodist Hospital. I've been also assistant professor of medicine at Indiana University Medical School. I am also medical advisor to the hematological molecular science of University of Chicago. And for last 20 years, I have served as a member and has been a past chairman of the Medical Licensing Board of the state of Indiana, which licenses all 28,000 doctors in the state. I'm also actively involved with many community activities like Manaseva Mandir, the Hindu Temple of Greater Chicago, the Indian American Cultural Center in Merrillville, and many social organizations in Chicago, including Gujarati Samaj. And I have been a past president of Federation of Indian American Association, or FIA, and has been a trustee of the association for a long time. So I've been involved with many Indian American groups and the senior citizen group, which I am again a vice chairman of the Federation of Indian Seniors.
Dr. Barai, I am going to ask you a little bit about based on your background on some of the national issues that we deal with on a daily basis. But my question is going to initially start on foreign policy side of the house. If you could tell me a little bit as far as what is happening currently with what China is doing when it comes to the border security issues with India, and how China is squeezing India, one of our allies, within the region.
Sargis, unfortunately, we wish the very best for the Chinese people, and there is a very strong historical bond, cultural bond, religious bond between the people of China and people of India. In fact, most of the Chinese used to practice Buddhism before the before communists came to power, who have become atheists. So there was a very strong cultural and historical bond between the two countries. But China, under the Communist Party rule, has been on an expansionist policy. Not only just India, they have been sort of needling Japan, Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia. And now the latest one is Kyrgyzstan. Somehow wherever there are resources that the Chinese think that they can mop up using their big People's Liberation Army, as they call it, which is really a security force or military force of the Chinese Communist Party, they are trying to intimidate their neighbors. They were successful in 1962 when Jawaharlal Nehru was Indian Prime Minister, and under Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, that means Indian and Chinese brothers, he stabbed Nehru in back and invaded on the northern borders of India. Unfortunately, they don't realize that this is 2020. And India has learned a lot from what happened in 1962. We don't trust the Chinese, certainly not the people of India. Yes, the Chinese have achieved quite a bit in economic field. The Chinese people are hard workers, but the Communist Party is taking advantage of the wealth that is created by the labor of the Chinese people. And they decided to do some probing on the northern borders of India. They didn't realize the Prime Minister is different, and he's a very resolute person. He's very kind, he's very polite, very courteous. He hosted the Chinese president twice to India and treated him very nicely. And yet, as usual with the Chinese Communist Party, the reward was trying to stab him back. But as Mr. Modi said, India wants to be a very good, very courteous, very charming host. But when you make it an enemy, they also know how to fight resolutely and save their honor. So India has a very modernized army. In fact, I would say India has a very professional army. The Chinese Communist Party army has never seen a war. They have been successful in crushing unarmed civilians, like they killed more than 3,000 people in Tiananmen Square, like they have taken over Tibet, which really was a Buddhist territory, like they are doing in Hong Kong. And believe it or not, they are also doing it in Xinjiang province, where 1 million Muslims have been imprisoned. And surprisingly, there is very little noise from Pakistan or any other Muslim country about the concentration camp for this Muslim. It's the United States Congress that spoke about them. President Trump spoke about them. Secretary Pompeo spoke. But when it comes to that, Pakistan washes the hand off. Oh, that is the internal affair of China. So no Muslim country ever dares to speak against China. That's very surprising, but be it may, it's their business. But this time I can tell you that if China really tries to mess around, I think they might face their first defeat that they have not seen. India has a very professional army, very modern army. They also have been very well equipped. And I don't think that China, beyond going some probing and mischief, or eve teasing, if you want to call it, because if they do try, yes, unfortunately, it might cause loss of lot of lives, but they will learn their lesson very hard way. And I think they are very aware the reputation of so-called People's Liberation Army, that they are invincible in the world, will go down the tube. So on one side,
Well,
they are trying to resolve it, but if it doesn't get resolved, I think the Chinese will learn their lesson.
no, we do know that, Dr. Barai, India has been a steadfast ally of the United States, and we know that under Prime Minister Modi it has really modernized its military capability. I have told folks before, India is very key for us to be able to negotiate within the region, and possibly is going to become the only nation that could probably have a renaissance that is driven for that region specifically. When we were putting pressure on Iran through our sanctions, we knew we had to be able to also put pressure in Afghanistan on the Taliban. We left the port of Charbagh open so India can work with Iran to develop that port, which pushed the railhead into Afghanistan, which is a reason why we were able to pressure finally Pakistan, who was working against our interest, which put pressure on the Taliban to come to the negotiation tables. So India is very key for us when it comes to being able to affect the region. I know that China is now trying to the tune of $400 billion to buy Iran because the Islamic Republic of Iran is trying to sell the country in order to be able to get hard currency if need be to sustain itself with the sanctions being put on it. But to us, India is a key partner within the region. Is the only way you could buffer against China. And I'm hoping that in the future we'll have much more successes, hoping that the current POTUS is reelected in the United States and continue over the next 4 years to build India's capacity to be able to be an economic juggernaut within the region. And it gives us an ability to also take our manufacturing base that is in China that is being used against us now by China to pressure us internally, domestically on our politics, to be able to transfer it to other nations, to include nations like India, in order to be able to be with our allies. With that said, though, Dr. Barai, I wanted to ask you about some of the initiatives that are out there, that some of the issues and topics that also touch foreign policy. And I know that one of them is the CCA, or the Citizenship Amendment Act. If you could give us a little bit of a background on that and tell us where we in the standing when it comes to the discussions on the CCA.
Sargis, what has happened is Pakistan is our neighbor. Actually, Pakistan was part of India that was sort of, we can say, separated out on 14th of August, 1947. So they are our brothers, and we wish the very best to the people of Pakistan. But in last few decades, Pakistan now is controlled by the Pakistani army, the ISI, and some of the religious extremists. And this has been a very deadly mixture. And people of Pakistan are the biggest sufferers. As you can see, Bangladesh, which separated out in 1972, has gone ahead in terms of GDP as compared to Pakistan. India is far ahead in terms of its GDP and economic progress as compared to Pakistan. So even though there are smart, intelligent people in Pakistan, this ISI army and the religious extremists have not allowed the people of Pakistan to come to their normal ability and to enjoy the better living standards as compared to rest of the people. And what Pakistan has done is they have been constantly trying to terrorize the minorities. In 1947, Pakistan had 12.3% Hindu population. In fact, Mr. Jinnah, supposed to be the father of Pakistan, he had said in 1947 that Pakistan is a secular country. It was not an Islamic country when it separated. It was a Muslim majority, but secular country. And subsequently, the mullahs and ISI made it an Islamic republic. And since then, there has been torture, conversion forcibly. So The Hindu population of Pakistan is now down from 12.3% to about 3%. The Christian population of Pakistan, which was about 3.5% in 1947, is less than 0.5% now. There were 2.8 million Sikh families in 1947. Now they are down to only 8,000. So if things were as good, then why are all these minorities fleeing? Same way Afghanistan. Ever since Taliban came, all the Hindus, all the Sikhs practically have been crushed, and Buddhists. Afghanistan was the seat of Buddhist empire. In fact, the largest two statues of Buddha were in Bamiyan, which is Afghanistan, and they destroyed them. So all those minorities have been fleeing Pakistan to save the honor of their wives, to save the honor of their daughters who are being abducted, converted, raped. So some of them have been able to flee into India, both from Pakistan as well as from Afghanistan. So there have been 3 generations of people living in India as refugees who have nowhere to go. Who will dare to send these people so that they may be butchered by the Taliban, or they may be butchered or forcibly converted, or their daughters being raped and converted and forcibly married away? So this is the state of affair in Pakistan. Now look at India. In 1947, India's Muslim population was about 8%. It's now up to 14%. So what the heck people are complaining about? How many Indian Muslims will ever migrate to Pakistan? None. How many Indian Muslims will ever migrate to Afghanistan? None. So what do you do with the Hindus who have been staying for 3 generations as refugees? Their children cannot go to the colleges because they are not citizens of India. Their children could not get any government or important jobs because they had no citizenship status. So this is like a DACA situation in USA, where people are living here, they have been born here, but they don't have a status. So what the Indian government did is to help these minority refugees who faced religious persecution in Pakistan and Afghanistan, they gave, and this is not just confined to the Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, Christians, they all have been given the citizenship status. In fact, some of the Pakistani Muslims who are persecuted, they can also apply for citizenship, and almost 4,000 of them have been given citizenship of India, where they can show that they have been persecuted in Pakistan. So this is a citizenship act which gave a one-time citizenship to people who had been living in India for at least 5 years before December 31st, 2014. And it was number of minorities that were included. And I think that was the right thing to do. This is a humanitarian gesture. This is a gesture for the refugees, people who have nowhere to go, and people whose daughters and wives were being abducted, raped, and converted. So I think this is a great thing that government has done. It has great support in India. And hopefully most of the Americans here realize that this is a very humanitarian reason. That is what we stand for in this country, to help the people who are oppressed as minorities, people who are oppressed, and we give them refugee status.
Of course, Dr. Barai, you're referencing also portions of the Article 370, which has been used when it comes, again, I think China has a lot of influence in the U.S. and uses that as an information operational campaign to try to, get at the heart of what India is trying to do internally to stabilize these type of domestic issues. But yesterday I had the pleasure, I was invited by U.S. Impact to speak along with other candidates specifically on the India's Independence Day. And I know that August 15th is really the capstone of Mahatma Gandhi's movement, which brought India to be able to finally break away from Great Britain. But at the same time, I also stated in my press release that I do stand with Prime Minister Modi and the recognition, and the Indian people especially, when it comes to the recognition of October 21st, 1943, which really goes to the heart of the future spirit of how India can progress within the region itself. If there's anything else you want to add on the specifics on the article that I referenced, you have the floor, Doctor.
Article 370 was part of India's constitution, nobody else's. And it was inserted as a temporary measure. Just to give you the background, when India became independent, the Britishers, it happened in a very different way than it has happened in most other countries. That's why people need to know the background. When Britishers came originally to India, they came as East India Company to do trading with India. Then they requested that to protect their assets, they be allowed to bring in some soldiers which they brought from Britain. And then gradually the number of soldiers increased and they started occupying and controlling Indian territory. So eventually they brought a large army in name of protecting their assets, and then they will defeat. India at that time was not a monolithic country, but there were several small kingdoms by the local kings. So what they started doing was entering into the treaty was like Maharaja of Mysore, Maharaja of Travancore, Maharaja of this. That way, when India became independent, Britain did not give independence to India. What they did is they made the two shelves. One was Pakistan, which was supposed to be Muslim majority. And then they made two Pakistan, of West Pakistan and East Pakistan. So those Muslim people who were from eastern part in India could go to East Pakistan, and those who were from western area can go to West Pakistan. But they gave independence to 636 princely states. So Britishers were hoping that some of those princely states will make treaty with Britain again, and they will be able to stay at least in parts of India and keep their troops. Now, Kashmir was also a princely state, one out of 636, that was ruled by Maharaja Hari Singh. Now, Kashmir had significant Muslim population, and in 1947, he said he was trying to decide whether he wanted to go with India or go with Pakistan. So he told both of them that I'm going to take my time. Pakistan could not wait. So in October, Pakistan sent army to try to capture Kashmir. And then they did capture part of it, about 40% of it. At that point, Maharaja of Kashmir said, okay, now I have made my decision. I'll go with India. Because I really wanted to weigh my option. Pakistan did not allow it. They sent the invaders into Kashmir. So he signed an instrument of accession with India, like all other 635 had started. So if you question that, then the very division of India and very creation of Pakistan and India comes into the picture. But 74 years have gone over it, so you can't undo it. Then the dispute went to the United Nations Security Council. And all this thing, bogus thing that Pakistan is talking about, Article 242, let me tell you. What Security Council said, number one, Pakistan withdraw all its troops from the occupied area of Kashmir. Then they said the wishes of the Indian Kashmiri people be taken into account. Now what happened? Pakistan has never withdrawn its troops. So it's like, okay, I'll give you $10,000 and I buy this house. But if you never paid your $10,000 and you come 74 years later and say, I want that house, but you never paid your money that you were supposed to pay. Pakistan never withdrew its troops. No, nothing happened. They are still occupying. But India, what it did is, in democracy, it is the representatives of the people that make the decision, not necessarily, that's how we elect our president, that's how we elect our congressman. So in 1954, there was a constituent assembly that was elected. So it was the elected representatives of people of Kashmir who sealed the accession. So it was not only just by the Maharaja, but the constituent assembly ratified them. So even the wishes of the people of Kashmir was taken care of by the Constituent Assembly. They requested that for a temporary period, and I remember, I underlined temporary. So it was put into Indian Constitution that people of Kashmir were given certain special provisions for their own internal growth for a temporary period. Now, the temporary part was never defined, whether it is 5 years, 7 years, 20 years. But what was realized is taking advantage. Now, then in 1989, when United States was helping Pakistan train the terrorists to go into Afghanistan, they also trained the terrorists. They called the Mujahideen. Pakistan trained them, and started creating intifada in Kashmir. And there were 600,000 Hindus called Kashmiri Pandits who were living. And just like what happened in Germany, Kristallnacht, it was the Kristallnacht on 9th of December 1989, where the mosques were ringing and overnight and saying that all the Hindu women stay here to be kept by the Muslims, and all the Hindu men leave or be converted or be killed. And thousands of Kashmiri Hindus were killed. Rest of them migrated. Some might have been converted. So that is how they achieved majority in Kashmir Valley. But Kashmir is a very small part of India's population. The total population of Kashmir Valley, actually the whole state is called Jammu and Kashmir, which consisted of three parts. Ladakh, which is predominantly Buddhist, Kashmir Valley, which is predominantly Muslim, and Jammu, which is predominantly Hindu. So the population of Kashmir Valley is about 6 million. And if you count India's population of 1,300 million, 1.35 billion actually now, it is less than 0.5% of India's total population. And using the terrorists, sending them across the border, Pakistan is instigating. Now, Kashmir has had several elections. So most people of Kashmir are very happy to be part of India. But then there is a small minority who is instigated along the religious line. And they are being constantly instigated and indulge in terrorism. Now, what were the other bad effects of Article 370, which were not foreseen when it was inserted? And remember, it was a part of India's constitution. So, number one, women had no right. A man will get all the inheritance of the father, woman had no right. The LGBT had no right. In fact, in most of the Muslim countries, the homosexuals are being harassed and punished and killed. So LGBT had no right. The Dalits or the lower caste in the rest of the India, they all have been brought to equal. In fact, the president of India today, Mr. Kovind, he is a Dalit himself. So there has been a revolution in India where the Dalits are given special status, they are given special scholarship, special admissions to the school, and special reservations in the jobs. Under Article 370, the Dalits remain Dalit. They got no rights whatsoever. They remain poor. Then there was investment. The clause was that nobody can invest any money in Kashmir or cannot own anything. So even though Kashmir is a beautiful place for tourism, there are no good hotels there. You can go to any part of India, you will find Marriott and you will find Holiday Inn and you will find Hyatt Regency and all top-notch hotels. Nothing in Kashmir. Why? Because outside cannot. So what has happened is there are no industries in Kashmir except tourism. There are no hotels, amenities, anything for the tourists. So Kashmir remained very backward because there was nobody who wanted to invest because they couldn't own anything. So what happened was that the youth of Kashmir got very disenchanted. They grew up, they have ambitions, but there were no jobs. And there are no jobs because nobody would invest, nobody could own anything. So many Kashmiri students, they left the valley, they went and studied in different parts of India, and they settled in different parts of India. Now that also created a little backlash among people. How come the people from Kashmir can settle in Mumbai or Ahmedabad or Delhi or anywhere, but a person from Mumbai or Delhi cannot settle in Kashmir? So to equalize this and bring Kashmir to the modern, rest of India has great economic upbringing. So now Kashmir will enjoy the same benefits that rest of the people in India enjoy. Of course, Pakistan does not like it because they always want to, these military rulers, they always want to be in state of confrontation with India, and that's how they can go to their people. People don't ask question about what is GDP, what is our education, what is our living standard, what is our health care. Everything is, oh, Kashmir, everything, oh, Kashmir. So it is in the vested interest of the military rulers as well as the religious extremists to keep the Kashmir issue alive so they keep on getting elected and they can easily neglect the accountability to the people. So
Dr. Barai,
abolished, and it was done by 2/3 majority of the parliament. In fact, most opposition parties also supported it, and it passed both the houses by more than 2/3 majority. And that is a done deal now.
No, Dr. Barai, as you said, the problem is there's multiple factors. I think there's pressures on Pakistan. Pakistan is really not able to sustain its future When we were looking at it from 3 years ago, majority of, if not all, the individuals in the Pakistan government were somehow tied to Chinese companies that were trying to develop the Belt and Road Initiative, which is their land bridge to be able to, the land bridge portion of it to be able to get into Europe on their 50 to 100-year plan that they've had. The other problem is that they also get a lot of money now directly from Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia today might be an ally of the U.S., and I will put that in quotes as far as how we're working on security issues, but they do bring a lot of money into Pakistan too. So it has become an issue where I think Pakistan is having a lot of problems internally to take care of themselves. And when you look at India over the past, as I said yesterday, over the past 70 plus years of being a democracy, look, they were able to, since the days of independence, develop a democratic system of governance, which is only parallel, to be honest, with the United States right now at the level that they're operating. And as you have mentioned, and others even mentioned during the Zoom discussion, U.S. Impact yesterday, that they've been able to establish this bridge between our two nations, most significantly between President Trump and also President Modi, that is really looking at the economic development of the two nations, the security issues that are affecting us. So it becomes a part where you're talking about, as I had written in Daily Herald a year ago plus, where I looked at backyard wars, and unfortunately, China and others do meddle in Pakistan a lot. And when you have a constitution that, as you mentioned, was written and issued to be a secular nation, and where we are today, there's going to have to be a lot of changes internally in Pakistan to ensure that there's a future relationship. That's why, to me, I think when Prime Minister Modi came out and understood this and spoke about the October 21st, 1943 being significant as far as independence, it does drive to a point as to how some of these issues were caused with how Britain initially left the region. But Dr. Modi, I do want to kind of talk about some national issues. Where is the Indian community stand right now as to what is happening nationally, especially with our elections, what is happening in our streets? And I have a question from my behalf is, why is there so much pushback from the certain members of Congress? In this case, I mentioned in my opening where Jan Schakowsky, who I'm running against my opponent, and the ninth blocked the visa for Prime Minister Modi to come here. What is it behind this drive that really is trying to put a wedge between U.S. and India relations?
What has happened is, Sargis, in last few years, especially I would say last 4 years, there has been radical shift to the left among some of the Democrats. And unfortunately, Jan Schakowsky happens to be left of the center, maybe too far left of the center. And the whole philosophy that everybody should get everything at no cost to anybody does not work anywhere in the world. And all the countries that adopted the irresponsible philosophy have gone down the tube. Jan Schakowsky has been elected several times, so she feels kind of secure that she is an incumbent. Now, talking specific about Indian Americans, most of the Indian Americans who came to this country, they are hardworking people. They work hard to achieve whatever they have achieved. They don't mess around. They just do their job quietly, intelligently, and putting on long hours. So they are kind of mini entrepreneurs. So their philosophy, when it comes to economically, realigns more with the Republican Party. They believe in less government, less taxes, more hard work, and responsibility. When it comes to immigration, somehow there was a feeling the Republican Party was against immigration. I don't think that is true, but that was the thing which had driven many of the Indian Americans toward Democratic Party. Then about now the issue of safety has come up, and both domestic safety in US and international safety. And that may change the feeling of Indian Americans. I mean, what we saw in city of Chicago 2 days ago was shameful. But now it's one thing for people to demand equal rights, and I'm all in support of it. All human beings are equal, and the blacks, brown, whites, everybody deserves to be treated as same respected people. But it is one thing to protest peacefully. It's another thing to go and loot. There are small businessmen, even among the black community themselves. They have worked hard. They have created little shops, and now they get looted. So on one side, people complain that there are no shops or no amenities in the black residential areas, but people are afraid to put in the capital. So city of Chicago, and this has been noticed in many democratically ruled cities, Seattle, Portland, Oregon, New York, even in Chicago, where it is one thing to allow peaceful demonstration. It's another thing to allow rowdyism, vandalism, looting, arson, burning. That's a no-no. And a lot of people have been turned off by it. Even Mayor Lightfoot, I was reading today's newspaper, a lot of people criticize her that what the heck is going on here that you cannot even prevent this. So the domestic safety has become an issue. Yes, there have been some police excesses and there has to be some reform, but that does not mean that because there were half a dozen or a dozen police officers who abused their power, we try to demonize the entire police force or to try to say defund them, then who is going to protect us? The rowdies, the vigilantes will go and break in and loot your house. So this safety issue does bother many Indian Americans. And I'm surprised that John Schakowsky hasn't come out anything. She doesn't care because she still thinks she's going to get elected. I hope she gets a rude surprise from you. The other issue is of international safety. And we mentioned specifically the biggest threat to the world today is the new Hitler, that is China. People think, in fact, there was a great documentary on one of the Indian television comparing what Hitler did and what China is doing today, intimidating neighbors, people. So a military alliance has formed between United States and India because let's face it, neither Vietnam nor Malaysia nor Japan on its own can confront the 2.3 million people Russian army, even though it may not be a very professional army. India has a large professional army of about 1.5 million. So it's in a position, it still can modernize its army, but I think it is sufficient enough to teach the Chinese a lesson should they be so stupid. So now naval exercises, Air Force exercises are taking place between Japan, Australia, USA, and India. And that is going to bring a reasonably formidable alliance, which will ensure the safety of navigation into the Pacific Ocean. Because what China wants to control is navigation. And if China is able to do that, then Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, Philippines, all of them will be able to have the freedom. So I think this international safety issue has become important, and that is also important to the Indian Americans.
No, Dr. Barai, thank you very much. I look at it from a policy perspective. Whatever is good for us overall is what we should be driving through. And I want people to know that Dr. Barai has also helped, Democratic candidates who have requested support. Even Barack Obama, who came to the Indian community requesting support, was supported by you, Dr. Barai, and others, because we're trying our best to do what is good for us all as a whole. I recently been supporting the Back the Blue events, and even yesterday we ended up having anarchists try to disrupt our gathering where we were presenting a plaque to to one of the commanders who had actually taken his own life. And during that time, I played the speech that Martin Luther King had given in Washington, D.C. And they started throwing profanities even at that speech because they didn't want to hear one of the icons of our civil rights movements here in the United States. I have a gathering to support the police and back the police on the 22nd of August in my district with the Evanston Police Department. And when I was asked, I said, ask Jan Schkowsky to come out. Why not? This should be not a Republican Democratic issue. It should be an American issue. So, and I said, if she does come, receive her with grace, because we have to work as a whole together. And I think in this case, I'm hoping that during this election, we finally make the decision, depending on, what we want in our country. And I think law and order, tranquility in our nation is very important for us to be able to move forward in order to be able to resolve some of the more difficult issues like China. So the more difficult issues as far as what has happened economically to us and what we have to face. Dr. Barai, we don't really have time, and I know you're a very busy man. I want to thank you very much for coming here. Will ask you again to come back.
Can I
Go
just
ahead,
sum
Dr.
up?
Barai.
I would request my
Yes.
Indian Americans to examine the issues which are important to them, their children, and the future of their children. And each candidate not go by the label of red and blue, but which candidate comes closest to their philosophy and who will bring good educational, job, security things, as well as foreign policy issues which are dear to them, and then vote rather than go by the label of blue or red. So once again, I hope that they favorably consider voting for Sargis. I think, in my opinion, if I was the voter in your district, I would have voted for you based on your merits and the issues. And I hope the Indian Americans living in your constituency consider favorably your candidacy. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Dr. Barai. Thank you very much for that endorsement. But we will have you back again, Dr. Barai, because I do want to talk about a lot of the other issues that are affecting the Indian American community internally here. And I know that a lot of things will change between now and November 3rd. With that said, I have to give my speech that I always do at the end of the broadcast. Otherwise, my campaign manager will kill me. If you want to support us, please go to www.votesangari.com. www.votesangari.com. We do need volunteers. We do need money. We cannot run a campaign without money, and we need all the support possible. Dr. Barai, thank you very much for coming here. Happy Independence Day, and we will have you back again. Much appreciate your support and help. And this is New Paradigms.
Thank you.